All right. Well, praise Yahuwah again, back in the 613 law study, quote unquote, commandments. Um, it's been a blessing again since we started. And I just want to make it clear where it's coming from. And this is just a small little piece that I had put together just to talk about where it came from. I've talked to many people about it, and some people put their thoughts on who it came from, what rabbi. But from what I found, it has stemmed from this man named Rabbi Simile in the third century. And and it's interesting because the Rabbi Simile, he created this idea. He just had an idea in a sermon that's recorded in the Babylonian Talmud, and it's in that portion, Tractate Makot 23b to 24a. And there's a lot of things in that area, but you'll find exactly this quote in there that he said that 613 commandments were communicated to Moses. And this was his thought. It wasn't so much of this is what the Bible says, but that's what he said. And he says that there's 613 commandments were communicated to Moses. 365 were negative commands, corresponding to the number of solar days in a year. So that's how many days he thinks is in a year. And he also says that there were 248 that were positive commands, corresponding to the number of members as far as the bones covered with flesh of a human body. And from this, he added it up and totaled it and said, this is where we get 613, which is 365 plus 248. And after he had they call it a sermon. He gave this. It wasn't really written down yet, though. There was no listing of it like we have right now. And so that was in the third century. And I like to highlight that as I did in the yellow highlighting because it wasn't from that point. It was from that point until you get to the 12th century that it says here that the Rabbi Moses ben Maimon, he then compiles the list of 613 and he creates a work called Sefer HaMitzvot, which in the English would be Book of Commandments. And so this enumeration is the one that's widely accepted today. And that's what we have today as far as the commandments, the 613 quote unquote commandments. Now, and I want to say again that we don't have this, we don't have Yahuwah telling us, keep my 613 commandments, so that's something that I want to mention because, so many times people can be in that conversation and we can all be in that conversation with people where they tell us, well, you must keep all the commandments, the 600 and some people don't even know there's 613. They just say 600 whatever. They'll make these kind of gestures. And so I want to make sure that we're looking at the commandments and seeing that how do you keep them again? And so we have these questions. We have these questions, which laws do we keep? Out of the 613, do we keep them all? Do you keep all 613? How do you keep them if you are keeping them? Are some of the laws out of that listing fulfilled? Again, do some laws not apply to us individually? And again, I listed that because some could be for a priest, or some could be for a husband and a wife, and some can be for a family, a whole tribe, a whole community. Have laws changed the way they're applied? And we brought that one up because of Hebrews, talking about the change in the law because of the priesthood. And so it's an interesting area of understanding as we've been going through it. We've gone through quite a bit. Now if I go down the list, we're already down to the 200 area, and it's been a blessing. Even though that we may not agree on some of them. We may not agree on some of them, but we could look at them and see what do they say. What are they? And so in this section, it's it's from a section called torts, and I want to go back and see. They created this section. It's called torts. It's under a heading. But what does it mean? This is another document here. It's just a quick little overview of what is the torts in the law. Now they have this word, and it's an actual word. I didn't even think it was a word. But the word tort in law, it's a civil wrongdoing. So whether intentional or negligent, whether an individual suffers a loss or harm which results in legal liability for the person who causes it. And within the tort, this word, there's three general categories, which we just said: intentional, negligence, and strict liability. And so here's some examples of what those could be. Intentional could be assault, it could be battery, it could be conversion, defamation, I'm sorry, false imprisonment, intentional infliction of emotional distress. So these are intentional. Assault is probably the easiest example to have because it would give you the understanding of what that is. The second one here, and it tells you here, intentional are wrongdoings that a person knowingly commits resulting in harm, right? Negligence would be occurs when the defendant acts in a unreasonably unsafe manner. They owe some sort of duty of care to the victim, and the victim is harmed because of the defendant's action or inaction. So this is the common examples that would be slip and fall accidents, vehicle accidents, pedestrian accidents, medical malpractice. And so these are, again, I want to bring this out because negligence is when a defendant acts in an unreasonably unsafe manner and they owe some sort of duty of care to the victim. So a slip and fall accident could be some type of water that you left in your business and you just left it leaking and you knew that it was leaking and somebody comes and slips, you know. The last one is strict liability. So it says strict liability torts do not depend on the defendant's degree of care. Instead, courts focus on whether a particular result or harm occurred in strict liability cases. Examples could be manufacturing defects, animal attacks, and abnormally dangerous activities. So this one would seem like it would just fall into the court, and the court would make a decision in this way. So, looking at it from that perspective, this section is the section called torts. And the first verse that we would have, and I didn't have a chance to write these down, but our first one's going to be number 236, and it's going to come out of Exodus chapter 21, verse 19. And a lot of them actually come out of Exodus chapter 21, as we've talked about before when we talked about right rulings. So it's right in line with everything that's been discussed. I know the brother, he encouraged me some time back to look at this word, and we see it in the King James as judgments. But if you go to your Bible, comparisons, you're going to find that, again, only one translation we find out there does use the word right rulings, and that's the ISR. Most translations would use something else, but you have the ESV that says, now these are the rules that you shall set before them. So they do say rules, they don't say judgments in the ESV. Um, but every other translation, the Brett and the Septuagint says these are the ordinances, right? So that's pretty interesting. They use that word ordinances instead. Um, and then other translations say these are the laws or the judgments. But I do like the word right ruling. And I'll pull that up real quick before we move into this section. What is the word right ruling mean? And again, it's mishpat, a verdict. H4941 in the Hebrew Strong Concordance, a verdict pronounced judicially. It says, especially a sentence or formal decree, human or particularly divine law. It says, so this is what we're talking about. We're talking about there's this something happens and we have to have a judgment between this action of what happened. And in this section, you find that Moses is telling everybody these are the right rulings. This is how you're going to treat this action. Somebody got injured or whatever. And we can go through this whole chapter, of course. But we're going to go ahead and jump right down into Exodus chapter 21, verse 19. And let's go ahead and pull that one up and see what exactly is being said. The verse itself, it says, if he rises again and walks about outside with his staff, then he who struck him shall be innocent. He only pays for lost time and sees to it that he is completely healed. Again, it's interesting that um, it's interesting that when they created this 613 law list, they just jump right into an area with no context, you know. And so if you go back up one verse, it says, and when men strive together and one strikes the other with a stone or with his fist, he does not die, but is confined to his bed, right? Now the law kicks in. If he rises again and walks about outside with his staff, then he who struck him shall be innocent. He only pays for lost time and sees to it that he is completely healed. So this one here, again, it's talking about on the penalty for a person inflicting injury. That's what they would have it as. So it would be on the person, I mean, the penalty of the person who caused this injury, right? And so it's interesting because we're going through these laws so we can have an understanding if you should still keep them. And just as I read earlier, I got a lot of that information from um, law sites because it's a law term. And this is what the same thing we have, we have in the scriptures. It's given us a law that our legal system, at least this one here in America, they use. But according to the Torah, if you were to get into a fight, maybe and it doesn't really necessarily mean a big brawl because it's only using this word strive. So it could be like fighting, brawling, pushing and shoving. It says to toss, that is to grapple, reeb or rube, you know what I'm saying? To wrangle. So, it could be just like a little struggle. You guys are just pushing and shoving, and somebody hits the other person with their fist, and it also uses a stone, but the person doesn't die and they're confined to their bed. Then Yahuwah said, you who struck him shall be innocent. So you're going to be innocent. So you're not going to get what we would call the death penalty. You know what I mean? You're not going to get, it don't even say you're going to go to jail, but it does say that you pay for lost time and see to it that he is completely healed. And I think that's important because we're in a time period where how do you treat this? How do you treat something like this during our time? Because that's our question when we look at the 613. We're trying to prove to those that tell us that the law's done away with that I'm sure they would expect if they got hit, like as far as with a fist, or they got hit with something, they would want to be taken care of. You know, you would be taken care of. You would pay for that person's lost wages. They couldn't go to work for, say they couldn't go to work for 3, 4 days. They were in that kind of a place. I mean, you would really have to hit them with your fist and a rock. I mean, in that case, but still, you took that person out of work. And we talked about this. So it's interesting because we talked about some of these before, but here we are. So this is one of them. And I think that I don't know if anybody within the church today would say this law is done away with. That now, if men strive together and they're getting into a fight and somebody gets punched and somebody gets or hit with a stone, he doesn't die though, and he's just confined to his bed for a time period. Now you don't got to pay for that. You don't got to worry about his loss of wages. And you don't even got to worry about if he's completely healed. It's the total opposite of what we see in the scripture. I just can't see anybody saying they would agree with that. Matter of fact, I feel like people would even go further nowadays. Now they go further and they say, "Well, I'm going to sue this person and I'm going to get them for assault and they did this." And that's not the Torah either. So in this case, we have a Torah that's telling us exactly how to go about when we're in a situation. And that's to pay for the lost wages that had happened and then move forward. Basically, make sure that this person is healed, caring for, that's the second greatest commandment, to love your neighbor as yourself. You know, we have other laws that talk about when somebody gets killed in a situation, that you have these sanctuary cities where people can run to until things cool down. So there's a law for that already. That's not this one. This one's primarily for that. And so I would propose to those that are telling us that the law is done away with, or who have been told that the law is done away with, to ask themselves this question: do you still need to worry about if the person that got injured should be paid for, or they had lost wages, that you should worry about paying for that? Or should you just not worry and just move forward in life and who cares? And if you should even worry about if they get healed, should you even worry about that? That they're completely healed, it says. And so it's a great law that I think that we understand today, that even in the court, I don't know how the court system actually works towards these things. You know what I'm saying? They might put you in jail. You know what I'm saying? They might do other things. And this is the difference, I would say, between the ways that we have to move together, as the scripture says, going to the courts. I mean, what's that verse that he says, don't go take these things to the courts? Let's see if we can find that. If anybody knows where that one is, we'll definitely want to pull that one up, because
Matthew chapter 5.
let me see, Matthew chapter 5, the one where he says, don't, it's better to deal with your neighbor like that. Let's see.
Scroll down.
Go ahead.
It's gonna be where it talks about
Online, lust, the righteousness, anger.
right there, verse 25.
Hallelujah. Hallelujah. It says here in verse 25 of Matthew chapter 5, thank you, Ak. It says, be well minded with your opponent promptly while you are on the way with him, lest your opponent deliver you to the judge and the judge to the officer and you be thrown into prison. That's one of them. There's one that's similar. The other one that's similar is that, oh, okay, thank you. First Corinthians chapter 6, verse 6. That's a good one too. Let's put that one. These both go together actually. So thank you, Brother Abel, for that one too. This one here tells us the same kind of a concept or understanding, that take care of it while you're on the way with that person. So looking back at the one with the fighting, handle that and make sure that you clear it up with that person at that moment in time while you're on the way with him. Unless that man or that opponent delivers you to the judge and the judge to the officer, and then you're thrown into prison because you didn't handle it with your brother. Because I definitely see that, you know, within, let's put it like this, in Israel, within the community of Yasharal, there should be an understanding that let's take care of these things because we're both believers. But brother goes against brother. This is First Corinthians chapter 6, verse 6. And Brother Abel said, brother go against brother to be judged, and that be for unbelievers. This is what it is. Let me read some more of this. I look at this one here. In verse 5, it says, I say this to your shame. Is it so that there is not a wise one among you? Which is what Moshe told them in the beginning of that chapter. He said, here's the rules, or here's the right rulings you're gonna be able to make, because you have to make these judgments. So I'm not against the word judgments, because it makes sense too. You know what I'm saying? You're judging amongst the people. And he says, do you appoint them as judges who are least esteemed by the assembly? I say this to your shame. Is it so that there is not a wise one among you, not even one who shall be able to judge between brothers, his brothers? But brother against brother goes to be judged, and that before unbelievers. Wow. Already then, there is a failure with you, that you have lawsuits among you. Why not rather be wronged? Why not rather be cheated? But you yourselves do wrong and cheat, and that to your brothers. But I love the idea and the understanding that, the scriptures is putting out for us, that amongst us as a body of Mashiach, we should be able to take care of our issue and not go outside of the body, and all of a sudden you have this unbeliever making the judgments for us. And so Yahuwah has already given us the way to do it. So in this case, again, Exodus chapter 21, verse 19, he tells us, if this happens, and this is I want to mention this too, it's a major area, to see to it that he is completely healed. It's not just pay for it. You know what I'm saying? Like, just pay for it. It's like keeping up to make sure that he's healed. That's amazing. So you're paying for the lost time, and you're seeing that he's healed. Hallelujah, because this is really teaching us how to love our neighbor as ourselves. Because what the court system's doing today, they're saying you go to them, and then what do? They say, okay, well, this is how much you're going to pay. And, the person ends up getting paid $20,000, and you just walk away. You don't know if that person ever gets healed from it. You don't know if they're still in the bed. And there's no love in that. But that's the way the unbelievers are going to rule it. They're going to say, this is the ruling. It's about money. You know what I'm saying? It's not about whether you get healed or not, because then they're getting paid. The lawyer is getting paid, as well. When you take it to the court, lawyers getting paid, the judge is getting paid, the state is getting paid, the county, everybody's getting paid off of this one thing that you take, instead of saying, let me take it to my brothers. So I think it's an amazing portion. Again, I can't see how this law is done away with, especially it being a right ruling. And we've highlighted that very many times, and it's going to continuously be highlighted. So when you're dealing with your neighbor, let's jump down to 28. And again, brothers, if you guys have anything you want to share, you're always welcome to. Exodus chapter 21, verse 28. Go ahead, brother Tobiah, and I'll go to this one.
Okay, shalom, shalom.
Shalom to you.
Praise Yahuwah. Praise Yahuwah. What a beautiful day to be in His Word.
Hallelujah.
Yeah, the Mishpatim. Mishpatim. What I've noticed with the Mishpatim, they carry a general trend, and some of them it's harder to see the trend in, and some of them it's easier to see. These being Exodus 21:1, these are the right rulings which are set before them, through verse 20. Or chapter 23, verse 4, as the way man put the verse markers on them.
Right.
But I think it's 23, 4. 24. Sorry, chapter 24.
Let's see.
Verse 24, verse 4. 24, verse 3. Sorry. So 23, 4, it's 24, 3. Where it
Yeah.
says, so 21:1 says, these are the right rulings which you are to put before them. Remember, these are the words given that the people didn't want to hear. They fled and let Moshe stick around and listen to. And Yahuwah said, give these right rulings to them. which a man shall live by and do them. All the prophets relate live by and do them. Here we see in 24:3, Moshe came and related to the people all the words of Yahuwah and all the right rulings of Mishpatim, and all the people answered with one voice to all the words which Yahuwah has spoken, we shall do. So this is like a completion of the right rulings there at the mountain, where the quote unquote 10 commandments, or the 10 words were delivered. The 10 words just happened to be the only ones the group stuck around to listen to. These were the remainder, titled by Yahuwah as right rulings, and Moshe related to them as a beginning and a kind of a finaling of them. Then taking the blood of the animals and swearing by these right rulings to live by and do them. These are the right rulings. It says, was it Isaiah, or it's in Isaiah? So the one shall come to reestablish the reign by way of these right rulings, and shall sustain the reign by way of these right rulings. So the coming days of the city that descends from the heavens upon the earth, the city of our father's people that Abraham longed for, according to Hebrews 11, as he being an alien, a stranger in the earth, this city shall be established by these right rulings and sustained by them, by the Mishpatim. So,
What verse was that in Isaiah? Do you know it right now?
yeah, let's go there.
Yeah, that's a good verse right there. I like that.
Yeah, it's going to be Isaiah 9, verses 6 and 7.
Okay.
Reads like this: Isaiah 9, 6 and 7. For a child shall be born to us, and a son shall be given unto us, and the rule is on his shoulder, and his name is called Wanderer, Counselor, Strong El, Father of Continuity, Prince of Peace. Of the increase of his rule and peace there is no end, upon the throne of David and over his reign, to establish it and sustain it with right ruling and with righteousness from now on and forever. The ardor of Yahuwah of hosts does this. This is the prophecy about these mishpatim, or mishpat, that they established this, and what they foundationally all do. They're all related to interactions between one brother's house and another brother's house. We have transgressions that are against Yahuwah, such as not guarding his Sabbath, or not keeping a instruction between us and our Father for the conviction that's put upon us as a sign of his people or whatnot. But then we also have transgressions against one another. Let us forgive our trespasses against one another, done to us as we forgive, as we shall forgive or not be forgiven. This equality, of would we forgive much, much is forgiven. If we do not forgive, much shall not be forgiven for us. Let us, forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. These are direct transgressions between one another. Contrary to, like, when Phineas rose up and put the sword between those, they didn't transgress against Phineas. They were transgressing against the Most High in blatantly in the ardor of Phineas rose up and acted. So there's a difference, because the Most High says, "Vengeance is mine; I shall repay." So when someone transgresses us personally, that's a different matter. As David was going to go take out Nabal's men of his house, for repaying him evil for good, but he was stopped by Abigail, and praised the Most High that he caused her to intercede, lest he would take vengeance upon his own hands that day.
Right.
Yet Phineas rose up to stop a plague. It wasn't a transgression against him. So there's transgression of the Torah, of the guidelines and instructions, of the law, of the commands, of the statutes, whatever word we want to use it by. But there's differentiation between transgressions directly against our Father independently,
Right.
not against our brother, but then against brothers. This seems to handle the matter between one brother and another. All of the right rulings seem to relate to this. They're all related to things that take place between one another, or exchanges beyond oneself, and their relationship with the Most High, but with others involved also. And so, in the context in general, there is the father of all lies. There is the deceiver, the beguiler, the trickster of all tricksters, the con man of all con men, that would whisper in the ear of one brother to go wrong the other. If we act on this, then we're serving that one, and some things transpire. This is where there's a right rulings about repaying double, when you can return the actual item, repaying 4 times if the item is gone. It says if the theft is found alive in the hand of the thief, then he shall repay that which he took plus double. Um, David said the man that took the sheep, when Nathan reproved him with the parable about the man that took the poor man's sheep, he shall repay 4 sheep for that sheep. He knew right away what the right ruling was on how to the problem, how to correct and make right, because that sheep was not alive anymore. It was done. So there's a differentiation there. And it seems to be that what our father's doing in every case, all the right. Remember, Moshe had to do this from morning to evening.
Man.
That's what he was doing. Was he was acting right, ruling. He was in the people, and he had ended up getting helpers to do it, right? And so, establish elders within your gates, that they shall be the ones that that decide on matters and look to the right ruling of a matter. Solomon was measuring between the 2 women, fighting over the child, and rightly ruling the matter between one another. And so, in all actions, it seems to be that the adversary is the correction of the steal, kill, destroy that the adversary sought to cause, um, is flipped over, nullified, or thrown back in his face.
Mm.
So we see this very interestingly when men have an ox and one ox gores the other ox. No man had an evil intention. They both share the burden of it. They both share the dead ox, and they sell the live ox, and they share the silver from the sale of the live ox. So
Mm.
now each brother has an equal portion of. Neither brother has an ox now, right? Not one brother doesn't walk away with an ox. The other brother's like, "Oh, sorry for you, man. You're down an ox. Hey, your ox is dead now." They equally share it because there was not an ill intent into the matter. But when there is ill intent, there's a differentiation in that matter. In this particular mishpatim, the word here we see is strive. In the Strong's, it's the word um,
Let me go there.
reeb. Strong's
Yeah.
7378. And
Mm.
this is in the preceding verse. It's also translated as plead. It's 27 times. It's primarily translated as plead 27 times. It's used 67 times in the KJV. Strive is translated 13 times, or contend with one another, or debate is used in some cases, and then several other umpteen other miscellaneous usages. Um, so they're contending with one another. They
Right.
are not agreeing with one another. They are debating with one another over a matter. um, One of them becomes injured in the process. They get a little rough. They get rough. One of them gets rough with the other. One of them cause harm to the other in the struggle or the strife that they're debating or striving or contending with each other about. All Yahuwah is concerned with here is that the damages, that which the adversary would bring, any kind of steal, kill, or destroy, injury, harm, loss, that they both stay together and see through that
Mm.
injury or that loss. That the goal is to recoup whatever has been lacked or lost. Particularly here, we see it is in regards to he stays with them, seeing that he's completely healed, the brother who's not injured, and that he recover from whatever losses he'd had. That brother would be instructed to carry out the man's chores until he was able to go and complete the chores, or help tend to his animals if he was unable to do so. You're covering in it. So it seems really different, really odd, but that's the construct of almost all the right rulings, is to offset. Like for instance, the stolen item. The adversary was trying to get little Johnny to gain a chicken from Uncle Ted's chicken pen unrightfully by stealing it, therefore causing also Uncle Ted to lose a chicken unrightfully. The corrected action in the right rulings is, by Yahuwah's instruction, is that at the end of the deal, if little Johnny can return Uncle Ted's chicken, he returns another chicken. So the offset is that little Johnny now learned a lesson because he sought to gain unrightfully. He actually lost exactly what he thought to gain. He's actually out now the value of a chicken. Uncle Ted, who was going to be taken from, still has the chicken that he regularly had already because the theft was found alive in the thief's hand, but he has gained a chicken. So it's flipped upside down on the adversary, the little mocker that would go, hee, look what I got him to do. Now
Right.
it's thrown back in his face, you see.
Mm.
The four times is because Uncle Ted can't have, if little Johnny ate the chicken, sold the chicken down the river, it's gone. You're not getting that chicken back. The the construct is that the four-time repayment when the theft's not found alive is due to the fact that you're never going to replace that same chicken or whatever dog or horse or whatever the theft was.
Right.
He's not going to have that same, grandma's not going to have back the same watch that she had. It's done. You're never going to see that same watch again. So
Right.
four times the value when that's the case. So there's always a it makes sense in the construct when we look at it from the view of offsetting what the adversary sought to do by causing to steal, kill, or destroy, or cause a loss in the matter. They're always offsetting that and causing the one who, if the one had an ill intent, he or wasn't diligent to guard, like you were mentioning earlier, the tort of being responsible for somebody getting hurt, the parapet around the roof. Somebody falls off your roof because you didn't put a rim
Right.
around it and so forth. So you dig a hole and someone falls in and gets hurt. Being responsible for dangerous things for certain. But in this construct, it's simply because there wasn't really ill intent here. There was a contention. They were striving together about a matter. They were in disagreement of a matter, and sometimes boys can get rough in that, and injury can take place. Um, and that's the construct here, is that the Most High says that when an injury takes place, the other brother can't just walk away and act like he has no responsibility to the matter now.
Yeah.
His responsibility remains until there's um, a resolve of the injury or the lacking, the loss of wages, the loss of ability to take care of the animals or do the chores or whatever that may be. That when they're both in that place striving with one another, the matter is not going to end as soon as there's an injury or a lack or a loss. That the matter between them two has to remain until that there is restoration
Right.
of the loss. So that's
No,
all I
hallelujah.
would say.
I
Yeah.
appreciate it, Doc. I mean, it's so important to expound on these matters, and I love that you took it to that place to really relay the understanding that this isn't just it. I mean, it is Yahuwah's instructions, but when we just see it at face value, it's just kind of like it's like anybody that just reads a book. It's just like, oh, it just says this, says this, says this. But when you expounded on it, it's amazing because then it shows that I like the idea, the one you said about the chicken. So now the person who now has two chickens at the end. I mean, it's amazing because I mean, people they think they can get over on somebody. Especially when you have something like a watch or something that's an heirloom that gets passed down to you from your family, something so valuable. And the person's like, oh, well, how much was the watch worth? Well, $20. All right, just give him $40 and be happy. It's like, but I just lost this heirloom that was my grandfather's and you just go into that and instead it's no, you're gonna give this man, you're gonna go and find a watch and give him another watch. It's like, whoa, those kind of that kind of mindset takes me into a different place of how powerful Yahuwah's word is to where a person doesn't want to go and commit a crime because they see the Torah and they say, well, man, like those thoughts are washed out from the gate. That a person knows that it's not even going to be a thought in their head. And then they teach their children, and their children's children teach their children, and so forth. So everybody's walking in this shalom, and it's a community where you go back to a time where people don't have to roll up their car windows or they don't have to worry about their horse getting stolen. When I think about like cowboy movies, I watch cowboy movies and you see them go to the saloon or they go to a hotel and they just like throw their horse around this post. And I thought about it when I'm like, man, wouldn't they get worried someone's going to come steal their horse? But having this, there was something happening. I don't know if it's true. It's just a movie, but it just makes sense though when you have that kind of environment of people working together so much that if it does happen, this is what's going to happen. But because their standard is always, it's already set, it's most likely not going to happen. Everybody's in a good shalom place of living. But Yahuwah is so good that he gives us the word and he gives us how we're going to do it. Go ahead, brother Tobiah.
This word, the word strive,
Mm,
I think it's how I read there. It's
yeah.
found 73, 78. It's found in Proverbs 25:9. And
Mm,
it says it more in a maybe more of a context. Maybe we might consider the an example of what's going on in the strive, but what they're striving. I mean, it says debate. That's the word they use there. Debate thy cause with thy neighbor himself, and discover not a secret to another. So it's actually
mm,
encouraging there to
right.
debate or strive with their brother about a matter. It doesn't necessarily mean that they're like drunk and brawling, or
Right.
they're having a fist fight in the parking lot because the one's angry at the other. Or this word here in contextually is more like they're debating something. They're trying to
Right.
hash something out between one another,
Yeah.
and it becomes rough and whatnot. And
Yeah.
so it's not necessarily in the context of what we'd say to society that they're, well, these guys are just brawling or
Right.
whatever. They're actually striving a matter. They're debating a matter. Um, in Isaiah 27:8, it says, "In measure, when it shoots forth, thou wilt debate it. He stays his rough wind in the day of the east wind." It's talking about in Isaiah 45 it says, "Woe to him who strives with his maker." In other words, don't
Mm,
go trying to contend with the Most High or
right.
strive the matter with the Most High, because that's not humbling myself and submitting. That's saying, "Oh, I think this is how it's supposed to be."
Right.
Who would which one of what of us what one of us would go to the Father like that, right? And but between one another, one believes he's right about this matter, and the other believes he's right about that, and they're actually just striving, and they're hashing it out. They're debating it. They're you know seeking that.
Yeah.
So yeah, so it's
Praise Yahuwah.
anyway. Yeah, I mean, so yeah, and the verse before it, I don't know why they don't include that in the
I
notes
don't,
on
yeah. Yeah.
613, because their context is really valuable. And chapter and verse markers in my studies, as far as I understand it, they didn't exist until the Geneva Bible. All translations
Mm,
prior to the Geneva was the first one that gave,
wow.
the book of Jeremiah, who split it up into numbers, and stuff,
Wow.
and gave it chapter and number markers. And so um, the Geneva Bible apparently came out about the time of the pilgrimage, or is before the invention of the printing press. I don't know. I did some studies on it, and yeah, they say that several sources say the Geneva Bible. So I don't know when Rabbi Shimley or whoever put these out contextually, and how they. I guess he didn't number them. They came along later and actually assigned a number. He suggested there was a number, and then people came along later and listed them and associated them with these markers. That must have been fairly recent. I mean, I say fairly recent, like not in the last couple generations, but
Right. Right.
recent throughout history, and let's say like past the 1500s or whatever, because whenever the Geneva Bible came out, that's the first one that ever had any kind of chapter verse markers to go by. So this this association of lists that you were speaking of earlier must have never been around in like 1200s or 13s. Or
Right.
it'd be interesting to see when they actually listed them out, or whatever, what kind of date time we're talking about here.
Well,
But
I
yeah,
mean,
anyway,
I don't,
yeah.
when was yeah, I would have to look and because I know this is again the 12th century. Uh, I think it was the
Okay.
12th or 13th century. So I'm not sure when the Geneva Bible was written, what year, um, to have that, so we can kind of let me look it up real quick and I can see. Because I think that's something interesting. When was the Geneva Bible written or
1560.
compiled? Oh, 1560. Okay, so it's not, that's
Yeah.
like right before, because this is the 13th century, I believe. I think I said that earlier. Let me see. Yeah, the 12th century is when he compiled this. So it's a little bit after, I guess. You know what I mean?
So he compiled the list in the 12th century before there were really actually
Right.
chapter and verse marking. So he was just taking a clipping that
Yeah.
didn't actually have a verse number to it yet or whatever.
Right.
Interesting.
Yeah, that
Okay.
is
Yeah,
interesting. I
I'm
never
learning
thought
some more,
about that.
learning some additional details. Yeah, it bring new context to me in the studies with several of us in studying things out once we found that actually that the first translation ever to have chapter and verse markings was the Geneva
Wow.
Bible, and then
That's interesting.
yeah, and then so some of us know there's different verse number relations between like Septuagint and
Oh,
Masoretic
right.
and like
Yeah.
Psalm. Some of the Psalms have different
Hmm.
or even some of the prophets. There's different verse number markings. They're a little mixed up.
Yeah.
It's because them verse number markings didn't exist for thousands of years. They were just the book of Ezekiel, the book of Jeremiah, the book of Yeshayahu, the book of they were all
Right.
just the whole book of. There wasn't a division of
Wow.
chapters and stuff.
That's
Yeah.
I like that point because I was gonna I appreciate that because that's some good history to bring into the mix, especially when these were listed not having a marker for whatever reason. He chose this particular verse instead of saying, let me just write in context, everything that would make sense to go together, especially 18 and 19 of Exodus chapter 21, it would make sense to put at least 18 and 19. But even further, when you look at 20, so we have the situation in 18 and 19, what we've been talking about, but then 20 goes on to say, and when a man strikes his male or female servant with a rod, so that he dies under his hand, he shall certainly be punished. But if he remains alive a day or two, he is not punished, for he is property. And then it goes into another account of, again, striving. And this is verse 22. And when men strive, and they shall smite a pregnant woman, and her children come out, yet there is no injury, he shall certainly be punished accordingly as the woman's husband lays upon him, and he shall give through the judges. And then it says here in 23 for 22, connecting to that, but if there's injury, then you give life for life, eye for eye, tooth for tooth, hand for hand, foot for foot, burn for burn, wound for wound, lash for lash. And that's it's all in context. I mean, because then it goes on, and when a man strikes the eye of his male or female servant and destroys it, he is to let him go free for the sake of his eye. And if he knocks out the tooth of his male or female servant, he is to let him go free for the sake of his tooth. So all that I would say is in one context of different right ruling situations. As your brother Tobiah explained, and I love that how he explains it because it's clear, and we're finding that this is all one context. So if a person's in any of these little type of situations, Yahuwah has an answer. So I love that.
Yeah, remember, we do not do battle with flesh and blood, but with spirits and principalities in
Right.
high places. So the underlying issue is there's a spirit behind everything. That's why Messiah
Mm.
addressed them. Remember, you lie and you speak from the father of all lies. He's addressing to the principality where the source of the thought came from, the one that came in the garden and sowed the weeds, the one who in man's heart, his mind, his leb, is deceitful above all, because that's where the adversary is sowing. That's where he's saying, "Oh, but he did that because of this, or she said that because of
Right.
that." He's poking and prodding our heart to get us to react, to try to disrupt the peace within, and get us to put forth an action or a word that is sourced from that thought. And
Mm.
be slow to speak and slow to act, the entertaining of those thoughts, and guard not to entertain them, to produce fruit from them. So that all of these are it, it, I would just encourage anyone studying out. Some of these are hard, like you see the one smiting his male or female servant. If he doesn't die in a day or two, if he's laid up and bruised up but he doesn't die, that's fine because that's his property. Well, that's a
Right.
hard word for today's culture and
For sure.
society. That's like, oh, what the heck is that? Oh, good thing that's over with. That's Old Testament stuff. People would think, right?
Right.
But it's not. It stands. It's how things are supposed to be, and it just doesn't fit into the current culture of society who calls evil good and good evil. So in our renewing of our minds, we are like, wow, that's a hard, it's hard to embrace this thought. But behind that is there's all the other verses that are tied in. Like this Most High says, "See, I put to death and I make alive. I wound and I heal. See it as I."
Right.
So even if that matter is if the person dies later on, being they could say, "Well, I beat him and killed him." Well, in the context of time passing, it's the Most High who decides who lives or die. Look at
Right.
the men thrown into the fire. Most High said, "Nope, nope, they're not going to die." Look at Daniel and the lions. No, no, it's not his time to go.
Hallelujah.
No, no. And so it's really up to our Father to say, "Yep, that's time for this one to go." And so, but as far as disciplining those of one's house, that's which one's men's property. That's between that man and them. But once it goes outside that man's property into another man's house, like the ox that gores someone, or then that man's accountable for what his property has done, and but within his own house, it's his property, it's his responsibility, and he's going to have to answer to the Most High for how he treated those of his house. This Messiah
Yeah.
speaks about it, how one treats their servant, and so on and such.
Hallelujah.
But yeah, praise
No,
you.
praise Yahuwah. And you know what I just noticed? I was looking at this as you were talking. It's interesting because so the Exodus 21:19, it goes all the way to 27, and that's where the next law starts in this portion. And then it closes off in 33. So we can read from 19 to 27, and it does fit in context with this portion of the law number 236. And then we get to our next one that we're going to read right now. It starts in 28. And this one, again, in context, it wouldn't just be this by itself. And Exodus 21:28 says, "And when an ox gores a man or a woman to death, then the ox shall certainly be stoned, and its flesh is not eaten, and the owner of the ox is innocent." This is the law by itself, right? According to what they compiled, and they said, this is the law here. When an ox gores a man or woman to death, that's a key portion of this because it's not just goring the woman or the man, but it's to death. The ox will be stoned. That ox will be killed. And then it goes on to say, and its flesh is not eaten, and the owner of the ox is innocent. However, now you go into 29, because we're in context. If the ox was previously in the habit of goring, and its owner has been warned, and he has not kept it confined, so that it has killed a man or a woman, the ox is stoned, and its owner also is put to death. So we have two different scenarios here, and how they're played out is, well, one, the owner is put to death, and the one where he's already known. Again, this is important because the owner knew that the ox, and when we talk about goring, we're talking about this ox is jabbing at people uncontrolled. The ox is under no control or authority, and the owner has been warned about it. In both cases, the ox is going to get stoned, but in one case, the owner is not innocent and he's put to death. 30 says, if sin, if a sin covering is laid upon him, then he shall give the ransom of his life, whatever is laid on him, whether it has gored a son or gored a daughter, according to this right ruling it is done to him. If the ox gores a male or female servant, now we're talking about a different person too. Now it highlights servant. It's not just back to a male or a female, so that's kind of interesting. He is to give their master 30 shekels of silver, and the ox is stoned. So, what does the goring mean? The goring, this is an interesting word, and so let's look at that real quick so we can know what that means. Because most I don't have an ox. I want to know what this means in the Hebrew so we can get a better idea. It says to push in the King James. They have it as push. Other translations says gore, but it says to butt with the horns. Figuratively is to war against. So now we have a better understanding. Nagach, and it says Nagach or Nagach, however you want to pronounce that one. It says to butt with the horns. So that's what is happening. It's interesting because we have sheep, and the sheep, they're not too bad at it, but they do that. Sometimes they'll try to like brush on you and, hey, pet me kind of a thing, and so I can understand from that minor perspective. But when you have an ox that does that, man, that's pretty harsh. That's a big animal. You know what I mean? That's a huge animal. But there's different scenarios that come to play if this happens. Again, 28, the ox is stoned. 29, the ox is stoned, right? In both cases, the ox gets stoned, but one case, because of the neglect of the owner of not doing something about it, he gets put to death. I want to look at this verse 30, and I'll come to you, but Tobiah, I want to look at this from another translation because this is the ISR. It says, if a sin covering is laid upon him, then he shall give the ransom of his life, whatever is laid on him. This is an interesting portion because it's right inside here and it's saying something. And so let's go ahead and read some other translations. Maybe we can identify what that is. It says in the Septuagint, if a ransom should be imposed on him, he shall pay for the ransom of his soul as much as they shall lay upon him. Let's go to another translation like the CEV and see if it gives us. It says, however, you may save your own life by paying whatever fine is demanded. The GMB, however, if the owner is allowed to pay a fine to save his life, he must pay the full amount required. That's interesting. I wanted to bring that out because most of the time you would just look at it like, oh, he's stoned. That's it. But in this case, in verse 30, it says that if there is a ransom that could be paid, you could pay that so that you don't get stoned. Very interesting. Verse 30, that was verse 30 of Exodus chapter 21. Go ahead, Brother Tobiah.
Yeah, I was just going to note that Nagak that we looked at.
Hmm.
For whatever reason, Strong gives it multiple numbers. It's the same word. The Strong's 50, 56, I think is what you're referring to, and it just shows it under that number twice
Right.
as push. But it's
Yeah.
also 50, 55, and in 50, 55, it gives 11 usages. Three times it does give it as gore, and it's right here in it's interesting because in the same section, like 2128 uses 5055,
Oh, okay.
2131 uses 5055 twice. But then back in 2132, they use the word push again. So
Mm.
it's the same three Hebrew letters.
Right.
It's the same three Hebrew letters, the noon, the gimel,
Hmm.
and is there going to be a hey or
The hets,
yeah.
yeah.
Anyway, it's same three Hebrew letters. Yeah,
Yeah.
the head. It's same three Hebrew letters, but for whatever reason, strong. I guess vowel pointing,
Right.
maybe, but they're the same words, I believe. Thrusting, pushing, but with the horns in particular.
Yeah.
Um, I find it interesting when you look at words like this because under 5055, we see this word being used in Daniel in prophecy, and it's
Mm.
talking about king of the south goring others or pushing down in this regard. Daniel
Wow.
8:4 says he saw the ram pushing westward, which are goring westward and northward. He's pushing down. So this action of goring or tearing into someone by a horn, with a horn and pushing them down is used in some of the prophets, but we wouldn't know it's the same word.
Mm-hmm.
Um, we wouldn't relate that it's the same word that's being talked about in the right rulings as goring or being gored.
Right.
Even in 1 Kings 22:11, it's used. It says, "With these shall thou push the Assyrians until you have consumed them," which would be that's the word there that we see as gore. And it relates. Zedekiah and the son of Hinah made him horns of iron and said,
Mm.
"Thus said the Most High, with these we shall push the Assyrians until thou have consumed them." This
Wow.
is definitely the same word here, but we don't really notice this. Deuteronomy 33:17 uses the unicorn, which is a Greek whatever. I don't forget what we use in the ISR, but they got rid of these.
Yeah.
Um, what it would be
They probably
what's
put
the
like
proper word
ox or
there?
something, like a wild ox or something.
Yeah, something like that. I forget, but it talks about the horns of and shall push the people together to the ends of the earth, and they are the 10,000 of Ephraim, and they are the thousands of Manasseh. So this is referencing the same word here. So I always learn from just taking a walk in that Strong's number kind of thing, and
Yeah.
because they so inconsistently, in my opinion, very inconsistently translated a lot of these things, so we don't even see the contextual the links, that this is referring to the same action. A lot of times that we just don't even realize it. But
Yeah.
yeah, there it is. Yeah.
No, hallelujah. I mean, and here it says also, it says Gore, what's H85? Oh, okay, it has the eight. Oh, it has the olive tav right there. That's interesting. Because some areas you have the olive tav and it'll be right there in that. In this case, it has the olive tav right there. And if you get the olive tav scriptures, you're able to see what that's identifying. It's another topic, of course, to go look into. But yeah, praise Yahuwah. Yeah, and it's just, again, we've seen this portion, and I do want to highlight that one more time in verse 30, that tells you that if there be a laid on him a sum of money, then he shall give for the ransom of his life, whatsoever is laid upon him. So it's an interesting portion, just again. But as we go back and we're discussing this, so that way we can know, do you keep this still today? Again, we're talking about people who say that you don't have to keep the laws of the Most High. And I don't even think a lot of people are saying, they're realizing what they're trying to say. I think they're just regurgitating what they've heard. But for those that keep denying it, I would also go back to this and say, well, how would you not fit this into your system of life? Wouldn't you want this to be done? Wouldn't you want something to be done? Like if this happens, again, you can place in place of an ox, you can place another animal there and it'll fulfill the same kind of understanding. So it doesn't take away from that. I think it's encouraging to bring this up to somebody that is expressing that to us. Because the only way to really get some understanding between two men is to give these kind of questions to then come to an understanding together. You know what I mean? We got to ask some questions. Brother Diggs, go ahead, Ak.
No, I totally agree because one thing is always I always try to tell people is it's nothing that the Most High hasn't dealt with pertaining to our everyday life. It's like right in a
Hallelujah.
word is in His word that and so like you're saying, these nuances, these situations that His word talks about, it's it's undeniable. It's just undeniable because it's matters that people go through every day.
Right.
They don't realize, like you said, they don't realize it's right there in His word and how we how things should be, or we as a people should be treated fairly, you know, depending on the situation. But the thing is, people, the thing about it is people pick and choose. Like you can make it so plain to the person, whoever it may be, you can make it so plain to them. It's like, wow, so that word, yeah, 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 yeah. But then when it comes to other aspects of his word, you know, they like, I don't believe that. You know what I'm saying?
Right,
And
right,
what I tell people, I say, well, you know, what we believe and what is something it should be considered.
right,
What you believe and what is something that you should actually want to look into because your comfort of belief doesn't change, but it's true. It just don't. Your comfort of belief don't change what's true. And people are comfortable with what they believe,
right.
and it's not about what you believe, it's what is true. Now,
That's it.
like I tell people all the time, I think I may have shared this with the family before. I have a friend that, he talked about your truth and my truth, and if that's my truth, it's my truth, and so on and so on. I'm like, all right, what's fine? And I try to be combative with him. I'm trying to be combative with him. I just keep it there, and I try to find, like you said, a key, different creative ways to try to get him to consider his
Right.
logic.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And one of the things I shared with him in the past was no such thing as my truth and your truth. There's only the truth.
Right.
It's no such thing. And I understand that makes it comfortable and, it's convenient for you to say that, but your name is what it is. My name is what it is, and we both know that's the truth. It's not my truth or your truth. That's what it is. We
That's it.
both know that, you know what I mean? We both know that this is that. And so, but when it's time to challenge our logic, then you want to conveniently want to say things of that nature. Your truth is my truth. And it's like the deception runs so deep with people that they can't see that pride and everything else in between.
Yeah.
It's and I mean, my brother, this friend of mine, he's well-rounded financially. He got his own business, he's doing his own thing, blah, 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 blah. But when it comes to like you said, like we're speaking of now, these things, these simplistic things,
Right.
these things they can hang on to. These things they can hang on to is easy. But when it comes to like, oh, well, fam, I mean, everything that's created bear witness to a creator. Everything, look at this. Look at everything that's around us. They can't wrap their minds around that, which really is actually easy too. But for whatever reason,
Yeah.
they want to, because see, again, and I believe everybody in the room can attest to this. When they start to hear other things that convict them in the word,
Yeah.
that's when they want to dismiss the Most High.
You're right. Right.
It's amazing. But, and I mean, like you say, it's not to say that we haven't always been there. I
For
think with
sure.
some of us, we've just like, whoa, that's scary. I want to correct that. Whatever it may have been that we heard ourselves in his word that spoke to us, we made a choice to say, I don't want to be on that side of the fence. Where some of us, we heard it and then said, ah, please, and they just dismissed it because it was they chose to, and that's not to say the Most High can't turn a person's heart around, but that's the only conclusion that I always come to. Like they want to pick and choose because it makes them feel uncomfortable about the things that they are continually practicing.
Yeah.
Is it, But like I hear what you're saying, Akil, because it's not a matter of us giving up because situations tend to humble people,
Right.
and they might want to revisit what they deny. You know what I'm saying? It's like, okay. Then I got people that feeling times they sit in the chair, they sit in my chair and be like, had this blank look on their face, like, "What's going on? You all right, bro?" And, and then they're like, "Yeah, man, you know, life, for a second, life is life, and life
Right.
is life, and man, and
Yeah.
yeah, sometimes Most High will try to soften your heart in different. I believe the Most High will try to soften one's heart
Right.
in different situations, and they might consider what they deny. So yeah. But
Hallelujah.
listen to Fed always one time studies. And I mean, I don't think there's no study that, like I said, the most high word hasn't covered pertaining to these situations and the situations we go through and
Right.
always fitting. Allah your word.
Hallelujah. Praise Yahuwah. Yeah. I mean, it's one of these areas like you said too, like when people, and I think we all can maybe admit to that too, like when you're faced with something in the Torah and you're just like, man, I have to, I got to change this way that I'm walking in, and you got to deal with it. You're confronted, you know what I'm saying, with the Torah. This is his instruction. And you can, some things like that take like months, a year, maybe days or whatever it is. And then some things you're just like, just got to do what I got to do, you know? That's it. So I think everybody can admit to those things and say, man, yeah, that was difficult for me. Like for one person, eating pork was easy to let go of, and for the next man, it was a little bit more difficult because it was a part of their common diet. So that's just what it is, you know. People stop eating pizza because they're like, yo, I can't eat pepperoni. I ain't eating pizza again. And you're like, man, I get chicken on my, it's like all the convictions, man.
Right,
You know what I'm
right.
saying? Like,
He's not get chicken on mine.
yeah, I met people though
Yeah.
like that. They're like, yo, I stopped eating pizza because I could. I'm like, yo, really? Okay, like but that's the conviction, and it takes it. It's really harsh, but yeah,
Yeah,
man,
it's almost as if they, and I think we've all done it. I actually took and threw away stuff
right?
because being overzealous, not understanding certain things, and
Yeah,
as time go on, you start to understand that wasn't necessary. Stuff like
right, for
certain weren't
sure,
necessary. You know what I
for
mean?
sure.
But
Yeah, yeah,
you stick in there, you hang in there. You know what I'm saying? That's the thing. I think we as individuals, I've had people um said to me, "Well, I don't know what to believe anymore," and just be going on a tangent. And I say, well, that's where the trust comes in. That's where you just allow the Most High to filter out all of the noise, and
yeah.
so you got to be still, just be quiet, and just keep on pushing forward, and not allowing the outside noise to come in to disturb you and the Most High's relationship. And as time go on, he'll kind of filter out the noise, but you got to trust him. You know what I mean? That's where it comes.
Hallelujah,
That's where all that comes in. You know what I'm saying? But
hallelujah.
it was one other thing, but
I'll
something you
say,
just said. It's something you just said. Dang, something you said when I went to feet. I wanted to
uh,
piggyback off of what you just said. But
but like you said, like there's only one truth, and we have to keep going back to the truth, and it's His word. His word is truth. If you want to know how to do this, well, go back to the word and you'll find it. It's there. And if you don't know where it's at, or you never, maybe you have a question, like somebody, I might have a question. I might have to come to my brothers, and we have the Telegram group, and you just type it in. Hey man, what do you do about this kind of situation? And is the Bible speak about this? Man, you're gonna get enough responses to come to a clear conclusion and be like, okay, the Bible says this. This is the word. This is the scriptures. Go for it. You know what I mean?
right,
So
that's the importance of fellowship. Exactly,
yeah,
that's the importance of fellowship because where somebody can be overthinking, somebody can come in. The most I can use somebody to come in and balance them straight out. Yeah, absolutely.
praise Yahuwah.
There's your rule.
Well, let's go into our next verse. Again, that's talking about an ox, and I don't see, because we're asking that question every time. Does this still apply today, 2025? Yes. Still applies. Some can be a little bit harsh, like Doc said earlier. When you see some of these words like servant, things like that, and you can always discuss like 31 and 32 and debate whether how do you go about that today, but it still all remains the same. The principle that's coming out of this whole section, it remains the same. The next area is this one here, and this is Exodus 21:33. Again, it's interesting because it's even in context still. So the law says in verse 21, verse 33 of Exodus, and when a man opens a pit, or if a man digs a pit and does not cover it, and an ox or a donkey falls in it, the owner of the pit is to repay. He is to give silver to their owner, and the dead beast is his. And when the ox of a man smites the ox of his neighbor, and it dies, and they shall sell the live ox and divide the silver from it, and also divide the dead ox. Or if it was known that the ox was previously in the habit of goring, and its owner was not kept it confined, he shall certainly repay an ox for an ox, while the dead beast is his. It's interesting because we just read about the ox up ahead, behind on the verses up top, and this 136, I feel like 36 goes in that section because now it talks about if the ox was previously in the habit of goring, which we've seen over here in verse 29, right? In this case, in 36, it adds to it by saying its owner has not kept it confined. And what did it go and do? It went and gored this person in verse 29. In Exodus 21, at the end of it says in verse 36, he shall certainly repay ox for ox while the dead beast is his. Now we're talking about a dead beast here. If if it was known that the ox, was previously in the habit of goring. So it's an interesting portion in 36. 35 was another section, but it all stemmed from 33. If you don't cover up the hole that you dug, or put, you see it in the streets all the time. Like if you live in a city or near a city or a county, they get cones and they put tape around it and caution, warning. It's they're doing exactly what the Torah says. They're putting this caution there so that way if you're walking by on the sidewalk and there's a hole, you don't fall into it and get injured. Go ahead, brother Tobiah.
Yeah, so 2135 is what I was referencing earlier. And we see the contrast in 2135 and 2136. And this is where I'd say suggest to consider the intention that our Father has set these right rulings for in resolving the matter. Is in 35, it's the ox that hurts another's ox. Like this one ox causes the other is one brother's ox causes the other brother's ox to die.
Right.
Then they shall sell the live ox and divide the money of it, and the dead ox also they shall divide. So they walk away equally bearing the burden, but they actually both walk away with half an ox worth of meat and half an ox worth of kasef or money, right?
Right.
But neither one of them now has an ox. The next day, both of them have the same struggle equally. They both got, well, I don't got an ox to work with today. Well, I don't either. It isn't offset where, well, one brother's got an ox to work with the next day, the other brother's got nothing,
Right.
or whatnot. So anyway, but then we see the contrast in 2136 where if the man knew his ox was in the habit of goring like that, then he's got to pay for the other brother's. He's going to be the one now that's going to be bumming. He's got to be out the whole cost,
Mm.
not shared equally. See,
Right.
because it wasn't just he had reason to be what did the word say earlier, to guard, to protect. It says the brother um he should not confine it,
Yeah, yeah.
or
It says if it
where did
was
it go
known that
at?
the
Where's
ox
where are
was
the other
previously
references?
in the habit.
19.
Oh, up here at top. Are you talking about the
Yeah, 21, 20, 29.
yeah, 29 says previously in the habit of goring.
Okay, and it says that he has not kept him in.
Yeah.
So if you look at that 21, 29, where it says he has not kept him in,
Mm-hmm.
then that word is samar, Strong's 8104.
Right.
Sorry about that. Strong's 8104, and it shows preserve. It's translated sometimes as preserve or beware or watchman or watch or
Mm.
heed. Um, in the matter, like to be similar to the digging of a hole and not guarding to make sure no one falls in it. You know, oh, my ox is dangerous. I need to do something about it. I got to keep him in so he doesn't get in contact with others, so that doesn't happen. I got to do some. I got to take a precaution measure, um, in that regard.
Right.
The watchman is keeping an eye because he's taking caution. Um, yeah, I mean, my brother's keeper. That's the same word. Genesis 4:9
Mm.
that we all can relate to when Cain and Abel. Am I my brother's keeper?
Right.
That's the same word. So am I supposed to be watching out for him? Am I supposed to be looking out or caution, taking caution, or in Genesis 17:10, this is my covenant which thou shalt samar between me and you. It's to guard, right? To watch over, to Abraham, or see 24:6. Abraham said to him, beware that thou not bring my son there. This word is translated here as beware. So
Wow.
this is what the man's supposed to do if his nose is in the habit of breathing. And if he don't do this, then that could mean he himself gets stoned with his ox, right? If it kill a person, in this particular reaction in 20, was it, we had verses 29, well, the last two verses we read
Yeah,
here.
36. We're at
I'll
35,
back up.
36.
35 and 36,
Mm-hmm.
we see that it isn't the ox gored another man, but it gored another ox. So he's fully
Right.
accountable to pay for that man's ox. If he gored a person, his brother, then he can be stoned along with his ox.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
mean that's what we're seeing here. But
And it does say in
yeah, the other thing,
36, I just want to mention this. It does say in 36 that you repay for the ox that gets killed, but it says while the dead beast is his. So what it's saying, right? And I want to ask you this is that it's that person's whose animal gets killed, the ox, he gets to still keep the dead ox that got gored. He's the owner of it. He keeps that one for meat. Plus, he gets money to go and buy another ox. Is that what you're seeing?
well, it's maybe. I mean, in the English, they try to piece it. We look at linear, according to Blue Letter Bible anyway, and Blue Letter Bible is not always completely as accurate as I'd like to see it.
Mm-hmm.
But they use they say the word sore, strong 7794 is the word for ox. Then
Mm-hmm.
they say mut is the word for dead. And then they say haya, which is they say shall be. Now they insert the word own here. I don't know. They do show some Hebrew letters, but they don't give a Strong's number for the last word. The
Yeah.
word it says it shall be his.
Right.
So I don't know if anybody else got a different interlinear looking on, because according to Blue Letter Bible, they kind of filled in own. I don't know if the word
Right.
own
His
is
own.
in parentheses, is it there or is it not? Let's see. Is the
No,
word
it
own?
doesn't show. It might, you
Is
know what it
own.
might be? It might be a word. Sometimes when you see a word, it has the full word as far as the prefix and suffix all attached to it to make it say this in the Hebrew if you knew, had the fullness of the word. Um, I'm going off of other translations as well. It says, "But the dead shall be his own." That's the Septuagint. The BSB, the dead will own animal will be his. But when I looked at something like the CEV, it says, "But the dead animal will belong to you. The dead beast shall be his." But he may, and the GMB kind of states it in the way I was reading it. It says, "But he may keep the dead animal." Not the one that owns the ox that gored the other animal, but the one that lost his ox. he's able to keep his ox, the dead animal, for meat, plus be paid out by the person that,
Yeah, see, there's a differentiation right there. That could be, I mean, yeah, I mean,
which makes sense. You know what I'm
now
saying?
in the polyglot,
Hmm.
it says that that word means to exist. So the dead beast shall exist, or I don't know how they go by that, but shall be present. Shall be, I don't know how
Yeah.
they.
Well, I mean,
Maybe there's another.
it makes sense though. To me, it makes sense to say, this man killed my ox, so now he has to pay for me to get another ox. Plus, I keep the meat that for that ox that got killed. So it's like a double up for that person who lost compared to, the other one where we read it, you divide the dead ox. You get what I'm saying? Like 35 is a different scenario. It's a man who has an ox of his neighbor. It says, and when the ox of a man smites the ox of his neighbor and it dies, then you shall sell the live ox and divide the silver from it. So now the person loses out on their ox. They divide that money and also divide the dead ox between them two. So the one that has the ox that smites the neighbor's ox, he walks away with half the money from the ox that was sold plus half the meat of the ox that died. And the other owner, he walks away with half the money from that neighbor's ox and half the meat. So it's like a 50-50. And 36 is
Yep.
different. 36 is like a double up for the one that lost out, and the other one doesn't get anything.
Yeah,
That
because in the first sense, neither one had seen this coming. No one, neither one of them had seen this coming
right.
or had ill intent.
Right.
So there
35,
was an
yes.
even Steven deal going on there.
Yeah,
And they both shared the burden together. That neither
correct.
one of them was offset any differently. They were both took the burden. But
Correct.
in the second context, one could have perceived this to come. He had reason to believe this could happen, and should have been guarding from it.
Correct.
Samar, and it might have been Shamar. It might be a shin there. I think actually more correctly Shamar, like as in Shema.
Yeah.
But this but he didn't. He didn't take any precaution to protect his brother from damages or loss, and therefore he bared some guilt of what his brother did. His brother didn't see this coming. So yeah,
Yeah, that's
yeah. When we
interesting.
study these things out, that's what we see a lot, and it's always in relation to interchanges between multiple in our interchange and things that, like Brother Diggs was saying, stuff that we can relate to, because there's things like this the things happen,
Right.
when we're out, doing stuff together. There's things that happen, and in between one brother and another, or between one brother's house and another, or between one individual and another. But
Right.
there's distinction here in all these rulings between what belongs to someone, for he is his property, for this is his property, versus what transpires between one house to another house. So there's this establishment in that regard. Not so like society would say we're all so independent and of ourselves, but in this context, it's always in relationship to, even the payment goes to the owner. Even the payment of the woman, the pregnant woman, the child that's damaged, as according to her husband says,
Oh, yeah, I like
and
that
so
one.
on and
Yeah.
such. So it always goes to the head of that house. He's the head of that house, is responsible, looks over and covers, but he's also then the one that's primarily taking the damage. And even if it's not him personally, but one of his house, then he's the one that gets repaid
Wow.
in that regard. Interestingly, like you read through a while ago, the issue with smiting a female servant, that is his property. But if he smites a tooth or an eye, that's another matter, because seemingly that's something Yahuwah gave that individual that's not
Mm,
replaceable. See,
wow.
you can't just replace that eye or that tooth. So, I mean, maybe today you could kind of say you could, but not really.
Yeah.
It's still,
Still not. Yeah.
you're taking something away that's not going to heal back up. It's not a bruise that's going to go away. It's not a bone that's
Right.
going to heal. It's not something that's going to heal. The tooth's not going to heal back. The eye's not going to heal back. You took it. So therefore, you lost you didn't maintain. Yahuwah can heal them, but you. It almost reminds me of the 40 stripe, more than 40 stripes, lest he be diminished, or how do they say it, degraded, or
Yeah.
in other words, damaged beyond healing.
Right.
And
Right.
so that's seemingly the context here. There's a border of that which belongs to a man that he damaged it beyond his ability to heal.
Yeah. I like
So,
that
so
point. I like that point though when you talked about the servant right now because that's deep. I mean, it really is because it seems kind of just oh, this is what. But man, when you take it in consideration, like what you just said, like that tooth ain't gonna grow back. Like once you have an adult tooth, you better be flossing, taking care of that thing because eating right, eat your vegetables. You know what I'm saying? Because that tooth ain't growing back, and that's such a deep understanding that Yahuwah loves his. Let's just put it this way: his creation. He loves his children. He loves this is a being that Yahuwah's created, and a person went out of his way and struck that female or male servant so bad that he lost his eye or his tooth. Yahuwah's like, no, now you because of that you did way too much. Now he can't grow that back. Now he's free to go. Man, that's deep.
yeah, these examples give they really test our the renewing of our mind. It tests what the culture gives us, what our culture today gives us an example of. It tests our heart because um, it'll try our heart to just consider that what's being discussed here, because
Yeah.
these things are outside of the contemporary world today. They hit they hit what would you call it? They strike strings in chords in the heart. They're like they push buttons. Some of these they really test us.
Yeah.
But in the examining the distinctions between how Yahuwah says you handle it this way when it's like this, and you handle it that way when it's like that. There's accountability in this way regarding it that this way, and there's accountability in that way regarding it this way. In those distinctions is where we really see the heart of our Father applied to how we're supposed to govern ourselves, what the right way
Hallelujah.
of making this matter right is, and who actually bears the responsibility, and who responsibility is born to, and it has a relationship that I think we witness in many texts, many proverbs, psalms, even the Brit Hadashah, and other examples of the text. We'll see quotes from the scripture that our Father's word that line up with the action that's taking place here, the calling or the ruling or the judgment that our Father says this is how you handle this matter that has went wrong between
Right.
one and another. He
Hallelujah.
really gives the contrasting and distinctions. It's valuable because in this testing of our understanding and contrary to today's culture and what culture would say is right or reason, this is where we have that labor and ability to really examine ourselves and really take give place to the renewing of our mind to align our
Hallelujah.
minds with our Father's
Hallelujah.
ways.
Now praise Yahuwah. Hallelujah. I mean, and that's a perfectly worded, to say it that way because it's easy for people again to say, "Yeah, we're doing the renewing of my mind," and then they get put into a situation, and then they don't go according to the Torah and what Yahuwah states how to deal with the situation. They go about it with their own ways and what they've been taught and how they've been. And I think that question has to come up then. Your mind is not renewed in that area. You know what I'm saying? You can really look at a person and say, "Hey, man." And again, we can all be guilty in these areas, like anger and all these things can come over us that we don't act correctly. And so it's beautiful, like you put it right now, that this is a part of the renewing of your mind. Wow, I love that. That's so refreshing, man. Because so many times, we can lack when we don't renew our mind with the Torah. This is that fresh water. This is that living water. You know what I mean? And so, Hallelujah. Thank you for that's great edification for us. Well, let's go on to our next portion. We have a little bit of time left, so I want to close out on this next one here. And again, it's even we talked about the number markers; they're not there, but for some reason in this section, in these law sections, that they're showing and they're in context. So it's pretty cool. I mean, I'm able to see from 33 to 36. We got to talk about what the law said about when a man opens a pit, or if a man digs a pit and does not cover it, and an ox or a donkey falls in it. So, very interesting. Let's go to Exodus chapter 22 and look at starting in verse 1. And here it says, when a man steals an ox or a sheep and shall slaughter it or sell it, he repays 5 cattle for an ox and 4 sheep for a sheep. This is the law. So one says that, right? But I want to let's go down to 4, because it looks like this is where, again, the context looks like it's being, when I look at these laws from 1, the next one's coming up in verse 5. So let's just see if it still works out that way. Verse 2 says, if the thief is found breaking in and he is struck so that he dies, there is no guilt for his bloodshed. If the sun has risen on him, there is guilt for his bloodshed. He shall certainly repay. If he has not the means, then he shall be sold for his theft. If the theft is indeed found alive in his hand, whether it is an ox or a donkey or a sheep, he repays double. I think in context, this is really making sense, right? Of what happens when you're a thief. First of all, the first verse and what we're dealing with, it says, when a man steals an ox or a sheep and shall slaughter it or sell it, he repays 5 cattle for an ox and 4 sheep for a sheep. He has to repay 4 times the amount for a sheep and 5 times the amount for an ox or a cattle. That,
Well,
according, go ahead, Ak.
in actuality, what it's saying there, see, 4 sheep for a sheep is an equal. So it's always 4 times the value. But
Mm,
cattle are not valued the same as an ox. See, an oxen is more of a beast of burden and laboring in the field than a cattle is. You can't just take your
right.
regular cattle
That's
and go
true.
hook them up and yoke them and go work them.
That's
So
true.
ox is a little more stout. Also, there's a little more
Yeah.
meat on an ox than a cattle in general. So what it's relating here is that if sometimes you may have to repay, like maybe the chicken thing again, right?
Yeah.
And you have to make equal. You have to cross over the value, but it's always standard four times across the board. That's David said 4 sheep for the sheep. If you were paying ox, you'd say you would pay 4 ox for an ox, right? The
Mm,
same kind of way. But
interesting.
it's relating a differentiation there, because if you're repaying that man for his oh man, let's say his sheep, and you're repaying him in chickens, then you're gonna have to go, what's 4 times the value of that sheep in chickens? That might be,
Right.
80 chickens. I don't know.
Right.
What I
Right.
mean? So
Yeah. I
that's
hear
what it's
you.
related. That's what it's insinuating here,
I like that.
because the sheep for a sheep is equal, so it's 4 times, showing you that it's really 4 times the value. But the cattle for an ox thing is not equal, so it's not going to be exactly four. It's going to be a little different. So what it's
Because
kind of
of
what
the
it's getting at.
size and then also what
Yeah,
it
because
does.
of the value. Yeah, the value
Yeah.
evaluation,
I
basically. Yeah.
like that. No, I
Yep.
appreciate that.
Yep.
And it makes sense, when you think about it, you're like, and I was gonna say 5 cattle, right? Like today it might be $2,000 per cow, you know, if you were to buy a cow at the stage of life where he's already ready to be, he's able to be processed. I don't know what area you may live in. It may be a little cheaper, but I remember when we were looking and buying a whole cow for our meat, and at that time it was $2,000 that the lady wanted to sell us one, and I said, "Man, that's a good deal," because it's a lot of meat. So
Mhm. So
that's
it's more
10,000.
now.
Oh, yes,
There's
more now.
Yeah, it's like topping the chain like gold is right now with the beef
Right,
market and stuff like that. But in
man.
sense, it's trying to say that an ox is worth 1.25 cattle.
Wow.
That's basically what it's saying. Because if you multiply by four,
Right.
that's what it's saying. It's saying the ox is worth about 1.25 cattle, so it's going to take five of those cattle to make that ox to make
That's
four times the
amazing.
value of an ox, basically.
That's amazing. And like you had mentioned, what the ox does, the purpose of the ox and it to do the labor, to put something on it so he can go and plow the field and things like that. It's amazing, So this man who gets caught stealing, he steals this ox or a sheep. He's not just, because again, it's an amazing thing, and I'm excited about it because a lot of times someone may just only want to pay back that one ox. You know what I'm saying? Like they would be like, oh, the courts, they caught me and they're telling me I got to repay you the ox that I stole. That's a part of the restitution to get cleared off of, or you go to jail for that amount of time that equates to that one ox. I don't know. That's what I would think, right? But in this case, Yahuwah is like, nah, you're going to be paying not just that one, but five times of cattle is going to be paid for this man. Because then this man can go and sell, I don't know, two cattle, two of the cows and get an ox and then have three cattle still. So he's still coming up ahead for his loss. That's an amazing look. Go ahead, brother Tobiah.
I just thought I just realized this. I'll share something interesting I learned about oxen and cattle in general. And like horses are very sketchy. They're real jumpy. They're real not, they don't get to be around you very easily. Like same with a goat that don't know you. It's not going to just stand there while you walk up
For
next to
sure.
it. It's going to be like, I don't know who you are. I'm going to hide over here by this thing. It's real jumpy. So cattle can be the same way to a degree. But when it comes to oxen, they just don't care. You could walk right up by the side of the oxen and just look at you like, and blow out of its nose and go, what are you doing next to me? You know, an oxen is really that's why they say the nose ring in an ox, because you got to pull the guy around because he's like, I don't want to, I'm not going to move. I'm going to stand right here. And so I say this because in traveling in Switzerland, France, and Spain, and the Pyrenees mountain areas and stuff with my family, I've seen sheep herders herd sheep up the road of a mountain where you can't drive and you just got to park in the middle of the road. You just got to stop and shut your car off because this guy's coming up the hill with 600 sheep. And they're on all both sides of your car. You're covered in sheep. You couldn't open your door if you want to. You got to wait till the whole flock of sheep goes by, herd of sheep go by or whatever.
Right.
And over there on these roads, do you know what they use to trim the ditches and the roads and the sides of the roads to keep the grass cut? Ox. They'll have
Wow.
signs up that say "Beware of ox" or "Watch out for" the little hazard sign. It'll show ox, not cattle. They don't put cattle on the side of the road to eat the grass. They put oxen. There'll be one ox, and he'll just walk up and down the. He'd be like, "Man, this is some choice grass right here that's growing out of the ditch." You know what I mean? And he'll be just chowing that stuff down.
Yeah.
And he'll just work his way up the ditch line. And there's nobody around to watch that ox. They just put the ox out there, and he cleans the ditch, the grass out of the. He keeps the sides of the roads trimmed. And then there's gonna be signs up that say, "Watch for oxen." Like some areas in the Amish in this country, you see signs up that say, watch out for horse and buggy when you go through
Right.
certain areas of
Right.
different parts of the Midwest or Pennsylvania and stuff. Share the road with the horse and buggy. They have share the roads with that. Of course, they have signs over there that says to watch for wild boars crossing the road and stuff like that. And
Wow.
but yeah, they'll have a sign say, watch out for oxen, and it's because the oxen is cutting the weeds in the side of the road. He's their side road grass trimmer, and because they're not sketchy, you don't have to put blinders on the sides of a ox like you would on a horse, like
Right.
you see Amish would put the blinders on. You don't got to do that with an ox because he don't care. He's not going to be jumpy and whatnot. So in the context of differentiation between cattle and oxen, the oxen are very much more like, ooh, I'm not moving. Who are you? Kind of. So they're a lot more stout, stable, a stronger stance they take. I guess you would say it's a pretty interesting demeanor, I
Yeah.
guess, when it comes to animals or whatever, but it's distinctiveness.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Hallelujah. And it's interesting because, thinking about what you're saying, and I was thinking about going, what we read, talking about this ox doing some damage to a person. When you have an ox that's able to do what you just described and then goes and does damage to a person, I can see why Yahuwah's like that ox got to go. He's doing way too much, or confine him. You know what I'm saying? Confine the ox, or he got to go. So but that's interesting. Praise Yahuwah. Now, thank you for that. I mean, that's some good information on the ox as well. And so, in this case, in Exodus chapter 22, verse 1, we're seeing that an ox, when it's stolen, it's replaced by five cattle or five cows. And then a sheep, if it's stolen and slaughtered, or it was sold after it got stolen, now you replace that sheep with four sheep. Then it goes on to verse 2, and it says, if the thief is found breaking in and he is struck so that he dies, there's no guilt for his bloodshed. I feel like we see that today. You could see that today. If somebody comes breaking in your house, you have the right to protect your house. Of course, there's a lot of laws nowadays that will try to go over that. So that way, you know, I've seen laws that it feels like, man, the person doesn't, he gets it. The owner of the house gets caught up in a situation because he was trying to protect his house. So there's a lot of that. Again, we're talking about two different governmental systems, though. One governmental system of Yahuwah, the other one of the world that we live in. But in this case of the governmental system of the Most High, it becomes, if you get caught breaking in and the owner of that property strikes you and that person dies, there's no guilt for his bloodshed. You're not in trouble for that because you're protecting your house. Go ahead, Doc. Go ahead, Brothers Bio.
It's called castle law. Texas is a castle law state. Missouri is. Oklahoma is. I'm not sure all of the ones that are. Castle law means a man has a right to defend with his life, to defend with um, an instrument to kill, to take a man's life, to defend his property and his life, and that extends for anywhere he lays his head for the night. It means his house, his hotel room, if he's sleeping in his car, if he's sleeping in a tent down by the river, wherever he has spent the night, where he has his property and lays his head to rest. Castle law gives the right for that man to defend with his life, to take a life if someone is trying to defend his property. So that was tested in Texas here a couple years ago. There was a neighbor that saw his neighbor's property being broken into. He called the cops. He said they're over there raiding my friend's house. He's not home. They're raiding. They're taking his stuff. They're carrying stuff out back and forth right now. You better get over here. And the neighbor guy enacted castle law on behalf of his neighbor, and he shot them.
Wow.
Told them to stop. He said, you stop taking the stuff. I'm gonna put you down if you don't stop taking the stuff. And they kept taking stuff and running from him, and running back in the house and taking more stuff. And he put them down in the neighbor's yard. So there was a big controversy over what castle law actually entails, if because he basically acted on behalf of his neighbor, whereas his neighbor had every right to shoot them. But does the other guy have a right to shoot that was being taken from the neighbor? So it's called castle law, that similar thing. But
Wow.
in regard to a lot of people struggle with the if the sun has risen on him
Oh, okay. Yeah.
section.
Yeah. Verse 3.
And what's being discussed there is time passing. So immediately in the scuffle, when something goes down and one loses his life in the scuffle, you got a right to defend your property. That's no guilt for that. That's what it is. The Yahuwah handed him over to that man, and that thief lost his life. But to subdue him and say, "Ha ha, I caught you now, buddy. Yeah, I got to tie you up in this chair right here. Yep, you're gonna listen to me now. You should never come to my house. You made a big mistake, man.
Right.
You messed up big time now." And then you kill him if the sun has risen on him. You subdued him. He didn't die in the scuffle. Your scuffle's over. You subdued him. But then you decided to take his life anyway.
Right.
That's a problem.
Wow.
That's what's being discussed here. That's the context of what if the sun has risen on him actually means. Because we're back to the same thing, where Similar thing where there's already notion to know. Okay, Yahuwah's already gave him into my hand. Yahuwah's already covered this deal, and the situation is under control now. It's not that I'm in the scuffle, and it so happens I had to take this man's life to get this scuffle to be done.
Right.
It's the scuffle's done, but now you're making a decision intently to take his life. That's
Yeah,
different.
I see that. No, hallelujah. That's deep, man. I mean, that's really deep because I definitely could see verse 2 looking at it and being in a situation where you get it's heated. It's a heated time, when somebody's breaking in your house or breaking in your property or your car, like you said, if you're, and let me just say this before I go. Yeah, there's a lot of states that are under castle. I looked it up, castle doctrine states. A lot of states. I mean, Montana, it looks like North Dakota, South Dakota, a lot of states. And then you have some under something called duty to retreat, and then some that are under stand your ground. So, and there's probably much to look into that, but just to say that's pretty profound to share that because not every state has that same law that you're talking about. So it's interesting. But yeah, I mean to look at it and to see that this person he's in his house and then somebody comes in and then there's this scuffle, you're protecting your house and he gets killed. There's no bloodshed on you, but then if you go and tie him up, like for what? That's that now there's evil involved. And now it says he shall certainly repay. If he has not the means, then he shall be sold for his theft. So what does this mean, It's interesting because then it goes on to say, and if the theft is indeed found alive in his hand, whether it's an ox or a donkey or sheep, he repays double. So this would be the difference too in verse 4 in comparison to verse 1. Verse 1 says you pay an ox, you give him back 5 cows for you slaughtering it or selling it. For a sheep, it's 4. But if he is found alive in your hand, if the theft is indeed found alive in his hand, you see him trying to run out with your ox or your donkey or your sheep, it says he only has to repay double. It's very interesting. I mean, because this is a law, this is a part of what we're talking about. And again, the question goes back, do you still stand on this law today? Do you still keep this law? When we talk to our brothers and sisters in the world, our cousins, our family, and they're saying, well, we don't really have to do that anymore. That's done away with. But what if this happens? What if this happens to a person and they actually have if somebody took a sheep from me and I caught them and they're running out with my sheep, how do I stand? Well, of course, if we're under the governmental system of the Most High, then this is how we're gonna go about it. Brother Arlay, shalom to you, Ak. Go ahead.
Shalom, brother. Yeah, appreciate the invite, by the way.
Yeah.
Um, so I just had a quick question.
Hmm.
How do we today differentiate between an ox and a sheep? Apply that today, right? Like what's the difference? Why is the cow being paid 5 times,
Right.
whereas the sheep is being four? What's the distinguishing? Why do you think he distinguishes that? Does that make sense? Because in the
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
four, it's whatever it is, it's just 100% back, right?
Right.
Whereas in verse one, it's 400 or 500 depending on you know
Yeah. Well, and the brother Tobiah just he explained it that and I thought I like what he said because an ox has a specific duty. Say for instance, you want to
mm,
plow your field, you have to
yeah,
use an ox, right? And so
okay,
when that ox gets taken out, you're not losing only on the animal, but you're losing on the labor.
right,
You know what I
okay,
mean? So
yeah,
when you ask the question right now, it just made me think about a bulldozer.
right,
Like somebody stealing the bulldozer, and then they're like, "Hey, I'm gonna pay you back with a little Honda Civic."
right.
And
So
you're like, yo,
it's like probably distinguishing on what is maybe
like the
well,
value, like the total
yeah, like the
value.
value of the property that's being stolen.
Yeah.
Totally,
Go
totally. It
ahead,
would
brother.
be like saying, if it takes five chickens to make a turkey, then it would be
Right.
saying you'd pay 20 chickens for that turkey because it's
Yeah.
always the same. It's always the same recompense. It's double if you can return the theft alive in your hand.
Hmm.
That's still alive in your hand. You can turn the actual animal back, the actual object back. But
Right.
if not, then you would pay four times. So it's always four times value. If that means you're paying back in chickens, then you would pay. Let's say you stole the turkey. Say somebody stole the turkey, right? They don't have turkey to repay back. They guys still got the turkey. They didn't eat it. It's still there. They can repay the turkey. They got to repay double. Well, repaying double means they would pay back the turkey plus five chickens because it takes five
Mm.
chickens to equal a turkey. So they repaid double. They gave the turkey back plus double.
Right. Right.
We see Jacob actually enacting the right rulings whenever his sons went down to Egypt. And
Mm.
remember, he wouldn't let Benjamin go down there because Benjamin was all he had left from Rahel, from
Right.
Rachel. It was Joseph and Benjamin were born from her, and she died giving birth to Benjamin. And he clung to Benjamin. Matter of fact, Benjamin had 10 sons of his own when they went down into Egypt. None of the other 12 brothers had 10 sons. When it lists all of the lineage that entered into Egypt with Joseph, and Benjamin came in with 10 sons. None of the other brothers had 10 sons. So Jacob was like making sure the lineage of Benjamin didn't the light didn't go out in Benjamin, so to speak, right?
Yeah.
And in that regard, he was clinging to it. He refused. Brother Judah said, "Father, you have to send Benjamin down. We promised the man that we'd bring Benjamin down with us. You have to send him, Father. I will give you my sons if I do not return with him. I promise his life myself. I stand for him. No, I'm not sending him down there. You'll make my go down to the grave in sorrow. You can't take Benjamin."
Right.
But what did Jacob do? Jacob knew the right rulings, and Jacob said, "Okay, here's what you do. You go down and you take that silver back to them. Perhaps it would be a mistake, but if it's not, you take double silver in your sacks and silver to buy more."
Mm.
He
Wow.
knew they were going to take the silver back and repay double. That's what he knew. And he also said he knew the very next instruction in the text where there's going to be Exodus 22, next chapter. We see it. They're in line. They're right next to each other. He knew. He said, plus you take some of the dates and the raisins and the
Mm.
delicacies that we do have down, and you give them as a gift to the men before they knew it was actually Joseph doing this. So it says that if
Mm.
your ox or your cattle or your herd or your flock or your family graze your field of grain bare, and you go and seek grain from your neighbor, you shall pay him from the choicest of what I have provided you with. So these
Mm.
instructions are found in Exodus 22, I think, verse 5 and
Yeah,
Yeah.
right
6.
here. Yeah.
Let me see here where it
Hmm.
says they graze the grain bare.
Yeah.
Where's it
When a
at?
man lets a
Graze.
field or vineyard be grazed bare and lets loose his livestock and it feeds into another man's field, he repays from the best of his own field and the best of his own
Okay, so
vineyard.
yeah, look at verse 4 and 5, and you'll see that Jacob did exactly this. This is what Jacob trusted in. Just like David said, I trust in your right rulings, your mishpatim, for I have upheld them, and they have delivered me. You have delivered me by them. He knew this. And Jacob didn't trust the words of his own sons. It wasn't just Judah that promised to return Benjamin. I think Simon or Reuben and one of them did too, also pleaded with him to let him send Benjamin down. He said, no, no, I will not. Then Jacob suddenly says, okay, I'm going to let you take Benjamin, but this is what you do. Verses 20,
Mm.
Exodus 22, verse 4 and 5. If the theft is indeed found alive in his hand, whether it is an ox or donkey or sheep, he repays double. He repay double for if it's perceived that you're thieves, you take double down because that'll make it right with Yahuwah. And it doesn't matter if it's right with if they think it's okay.
Right.
In Yahuwah's eyes, it's right. It's made right by the right ruling.
Right.
And when a man lets his field or vineyard be grazed bare and let loose his livestock, and it feeds in another man's field, he repays from the best of his own field and from the best of his own vineyard. So Jacob said, and you take a gift down to the man from the dates and the raisins that we do have for him, because he perceived that it would be that his family, his flock, his herd, had no grain. See, the whole deal was they had no grain.
Yeah.
Judah said, let us not be without grain, or for our children, let our children not die without grain. Let us go down and seek grain. So he enacted these two right rulings right here back to back, and he trusted in them over his own son's words.
Mm.
He
Mm.
trusted in the right rulings. He knew that it would be right by you, by the eyes of Yahuwah to do this. This would make matters right. If it's perceived that you're thieves, then this will make it right. That you stole, this will make it right. Return the item and double. And so the construct is very baseline simple. If you can return the actual item or the animal, the theft is found alive as it's still existing in the thief's hand, you return it plus equal value. So you repay double. If it's not, you repay four times. And sometimes the four-time evaluation means you're paying, 5 chickens for a turkey, so you pay 20 chickens for that turkey.
Yeah.
Or like brother said, you got to repay, 10 Honda Civics for a bulldozer or however you want to do it. I mean,
Yeah,
so I'm just saying that's what
it's
it's
real
getting at.
though.
That's why it seems different. And yeah, it's real. It's on the level. It's our Father's way of saying, here's how you relate
Hallelujah.
this. This is how you make right by this.
Yeah.
And that's what he's saying. Yeah.
Now praise Yahuwah. I mean, it's so amazing because it it's showing that the Torah is not done away with. You're still using it to apply it to your life, so
Right.
that way you now, when you're in a situation, because I mean, we all going to get put in situations throughout life, and we're going to say, "Man, how do I deal with this?" And then
Right.
Yahuwah is like, "Well, this is how you deal with it."
I
You know what
mean,
I'm saying?
praise Yah.
You got the instruction. Don't
Right.
worry about trying to figure it out on your own, because see, we're all men. We're just, and a lot of times our emotions can get involved, our anger can get involved, and then we're like, "No, I'm just gonna give him an ox back, and he's happy." That's not
And
the way
not
Yahuwah said. Yahuwah was like,
get
"Nah,
more. Yeah.
yeah, you're gonna do it like this because he lost out, and now he's gonna be able." And I think in this case too, with the five cattle, it's amazing because this man can actually go and sell two cattle, get an ox, and still have three cattle left.
Right.
So he's coming
I
up,
would
and.
I would take it to another level, even in
Mhm.
Messiah's words, when he says, "Turn the other cheek." If one man asks for your shirt, give him your shoes too, or whatever, so to speak. And I butchered that one, but because he has an expectation and a belief that the Most High is going to make everything right at some point
Mm.
moving forward. He sees all things, and if
Yeah.
someone has stolen from you, he's gonna cause the right ruling to take effect. The kingdom that comes is gonna enact right ruling for everybody who's suffered or been taken from or done wrongly, and
Yeah.
they're gonna receive double or four times. You shall receive that which you houses you not build, vineyards you did not plant, so on. It's because those that were wronged, they were tread down, they were as sheep among wolves, they were taken advantage of. They believe that vengeance is his and he repays. They didn't seek to get repayment on their own. They sought to just let it be in his hands. And
Mm.
they trust in him, they believe in him, they have expectation of him. He shall repay, and he will keep his word and his right rulings. He will enforce, he will carry them out. Whether
Yeah.
it be in this lifetime or the next, the repayment for those who have suffered and been done wrongly is going to get handed back to them. And that belief and expectation and promise is what I think Messiah was relating to when he says, if they ask for this, give them even more. Let them take even more from you because it's only going to net you more later. You
Wow.
don't need that right now. You can go without that right now because it's only going to get you paid back more later. You're
Mm.
building up treasure in the heavens for yourself because
Hallelujah.
according to the right rulings, this guy has done himself in, man. He thinks he gained something right now. He thinks he gained 4 chickens today. What? I got 4 chickens. Guess what he did? He put himself in the hole by that. He not only not did gain them 4 chickens, he's down now 8. He down them 4 chickens and plus 4 more,
Wow.
or more than that. If he can't, he's down. It's so. Well, in that case, by 4 times, he's down what 16. If what I mean. So it's an offset. They wronged you. You're gonna get blessed at some point
Yeah.
by the measure of the right rulings, because our Father says that a man shall live by and do them, and the kingdom shall be established and sustained by them. That means every time you got took from wrongly done, and they took your shirt and your shoes too, well, you got plenty of shirts and shoes coming to you
Mm.
because you believe in that which is not seen, that
Yeah.
which the world will be like, what are you so happy about? Count it all joy. What are you jumping around about, Brother JP? They just stole your stuff, man.
Right.
Well, man, well, come on back. You want some more? I'll give you some more stuff. Here, come on. I'll help you. Here,
Hallelujah.
you can have some more of my stuff because it's going
Hallelujah.
to equate to more later. So
Yeah.
I would take it to that level, and that's hard. I can't say I'm there, I can see the principle, but
Right.
to walk that principle out, that's still I'm still working on that. I'm dealing with it right now. I mean, I've had stuff
Yeah.
stolen from me over Sukkot. I found
Man.
some stuff I
Wow.
left was stolen from me. So I'm dealing with while I was away. Not while I was away, as the promise says, nothing from my home where I left from where I was dwelling to when I went away for Sukkot was stolen. It was when I was down in Sukkot and went to check on some belongings that I had left down in that area back way back when. I found out that since I was back there last time, a lot of things been stolen.
Yeah.
And I'm like, how do I deal with what how? Ooh. But yeah, so it's difficult. In I don't know. I'm still working it out because it's very interesting because it isn't like I don't know who took it. I actually ran across my stuff. I know who's got the stuff. I
Mm,
found the stuff. Like I didn't even. I almost tripped over the. I say trip over. I
Yeah.
drove by. I'm driving down the road. I'm like, hey, there's some of my stuff right over there. Oh
Yeah.
my gosh. But yeah, so what do I do? Maybe I'm like, should I offer them some more stuff? Now the world
Right.
would look like, what are you, loony? You crazy? You got to off in your head? What? No, because I'm thinking about this. Like,
Yeah.
if
Yeah.
I really believe and have an expectation, hey, how much
Right.
more stuff you want? What else can I give you?
Right.
What would fill you? Are you full? You know,
maybe
Yeah.
that's the approach, right? Is just to say, hey, have a conversation and say, hey, do you need help? Right?
right?
You need to do
Yeah.
I think
stuff.
that's the heart of it is to be kind, and give out of your heart, right? Like that. I think where that's where that real application. I think that's what Yeshua was trying to teach us is like,
Yeah.
look, it's not just about recompense, it's not just about thing, it's about giving more than what is being asked for
Yeah.
because they
Well,
might actually need it, right?
Well, it's true. They might, but then you got crackheads. They're just
Right,
going
yeah,
to
sure,
support their
sure,
habit.
yeah,
They're just going to support their habit. Like
right,
I mean,
yeah,
I got
absolutely.
family members. I got a half brother that he's got a habit. A bad one.
Right,
And my sister and I we talk about what are we going to do about it, brother? And she's like, you can't just give them these things. You're just enabling him to continue his
That's
habit.
true. Yeah.
And so in that context, it's not about that really. I think
right.
that sometimes Messiah was saying things. I think he was actually believing in it, like Jacob was believing in an expectation, and he didn't, he was trusting in the right ruling. These right rulings will establish the kingdom, which a man shall live by and do them, so on
Mhm.
and so on. There's something to this, to believe in this,
Hallelujah.
to trust in these. And our Father says, "I am the one that shall repay.
Yeah.
I will make right. I will make pay vengeance." And so
Hallelujah.
I think David was that way. I think when David was wronged by Nabal like that, um, I think not only did our father deal with Nabal 10 days after his wife told him, she did the womanly thing. She
Right.
subjected herself to her husband, as the Brit Hadashah even says.
Yeah.
She could have told him while he was drunk within himself that night. He would have forgot all about it the next morning, but she waited till the next morning and told him when he had a level head that she went and made right by the ways of Abihu and for his for on behalf of his house, because the servants of Nabal even knew our master has repaid evil for good. They knew that that meant evil would come upon their master's house and not leave. They said, "Oh, our master has resolved to repay David evil for good. This is not a good thing." And she's
Right.
like, "Oh no!" And she covered the matter by going and taking and appealing to David and doing that. And 10 days later, the Most High struck him. But also, I think so vengeance is mine; I shall repay. That's what the Most High did with Nabal. But also, because David was wronged in this way, our Father increased him greatly for enduring the wrong and
Mm.
making right by the right ruling. See, so
Hallelujah.
I think that's what I think we could see that all. If you look for it in subtle ways, when we understand these principles, they're actually interlaced and intertwined all throughout the witnesses in the Tanakh and the
Hallelujah.
examples, and they're spoken about in the Brit too.
Praise Yahuwah. Praise
Yeah.
Yahuwah. Well, hallelujah. I appreciate us going through this because again, we're looking at this section right now called the torts, and it's interesting. I've never come across this word until we came into looking at it and finding what it is, and then now being able to look through what has been listed in the 613 quote unquote commandments and being able to see, how to deal with our neighbor. Again, this is how to deal with your neighbor, how to deal with your brother, those that your sister in the walk, especially. Because I think we brought up the verse earlier talking about taking it to the courts and taking it to the unbelievers and how they're going to deal with it and so forth. And so in this case, Yahuwah is showing us how to really handle matters with one another so that way we can get things settled so that things don't have to go to the courts. They shouldn't go to the courts anyways. So, well, we'll close off here, and next week we'll be back in this section. We're almost done with the first half of the 613 commandments. And so we'll get to 248 and be completed with the first section, and then we'll start a new one. But we'll be back here in Exodus 22 next week. As you see, there's verse 5, verse 6, verse 7, verse 11, and so forth. And so we'll come back and touch down on this and see what else we can talk about. So I appreciate everybody joining in. Yahuwah bless you all in your homes. We'll be back on again Monday for the Monday study and back here for the Thursday study and the Shabbat if you're available. So, all right. Well, shalom to y'all, brothers. Have a blessed evening, blessed morning, blessed night. Yahuwah bless you all. Shalom to y'all.